opportunities that I would get, and I'd say they were very, very few. And referring back to being naive and saying, hey, I'm going to walk on at Miami, it was very lucky that I actually got a shot to play there. So lucky. And, I look back and I think when I left college football, I was the second leading scorer in the history of college football at the time, right? But I still probably, in a way, it was a dumb decision to go there because my opportunity, my window was so tiny to play there. If I would have gone to another school, Georgia Southern, pick one. I probably would have had a better shot and a more legit shot to play, and I would have probably had a successful college career. But what happened was we had a phenomenal kicker who was graduating. He was second-team All-American behind David Treadwell, if anyone remembers him kicking in the NFL. And it was Greg Cox. He made a 56-yard field goal in the national championship game against Oklahoma. And I was basically one of many that were just sitting and waiting for him to graduate. There was no chance any walk-on or any other guy was going to take his job when he was a senior. And nor should we have. He was outstanding. So, but anyway, Johnson saw me kick a couple times, and he I think, thought that I had potential in the future, right? I mean, even though he had a national caliber type football team, they're thinking about next year and who's going to do what. And so I kind of did what I had to do. It was tough to be a walk-on. I mean, you basically got abused. I mean, it's kind of like being hazed as probably a fraternity guy or worse. I wasn't in a fraternity, but from what I hear, I mean, you got to carry the seniors' bags. You got to do. I had to run into linemen and be like a tackling dummy, right? Because they're like, you're just a kicker, you're a walk-on. We need you to do this and get our team ready. Now they wouldn't headhunt me and take me out, but it wasn't fun, right? They take some shots at you, and you had to really pay your dues. And then so the opportunity came about when we had, sorry about that, we had a couple scholarship kickers that came in during that time, and one of them was very talented, and it just turns out he hurt his knee, and he was my age, and he had to have knee surgery, and there was my opportunity, right? So I probably would have never been given one because he was a talented field goal kicker, and I had my opportunity. I think I had to beat out 13 other guys, and there was 2 scholarship guys that were in the mix. And Johnson was the type of guy that, well, he got to where he got to because he was like this. I believe that he truly wanted the best player to play. And I've been around the game a long time now at all levels. And I've been coaching high school football for a long time now as well, volunteer my time doing that. But at the college level, it's such a big deal, and even more today. They will make sure that the scholarship player gets the opportunity. I want to say 10 times before the walk-on. And why is that? Because first, they already invested in that scholarship player, right? So they have an emotional tie to that player who they recruited, and that's understandable. Secondly, they've already given him a ton of money or promised him a ton of money by paying for his school and his per diem and all the things that they get as scholarship athletes. And then lastly, there's a little bit of an ego or a pride thing in whatever coach or coaches recruit that player. They put it upon themselves to say, hey, we're coaches. We're great coaches. We need to make sure that these players succeed. If they don't, we're not doing our job as coaches. So as a walk-on, you're battling all of that, right? I mean, it is so difficult. And, for years I got phone calls, hey, how did you do it? And, I want my son to be like Carlos Huerta. I'm like, hey, that's very flattering. But I really I worked hard. I took advantage of my opportunity. I had some talent. I took it very seriously. I gave up I sacrificed a lot to get there, but man, I was lucky. I was kind of there right after the great kicker graduated, and then the guy that was going to replace him hurt his knee, right? So it was a really fortunate thing. And I think a lot of people that watch sports, I think they tend to believe, the best player will play. and the cream does rise to the top, but you got to have an opportunity. And I think Johnson gave me that shot because there was other guys he could have chosen too, even though the one player had hurt himself. Johnson wanted the best guy. And I got to say, I was this much better. Once you get to that level, very few are that much better. There's very few Vinny Testaverdes or there's very few Michael Irvins, right? Those guys are Hall of Famers. The other guys are all real close. And the difference between getting to play and playing well, it's not much of a difference. It really isn't. It's just a matter of things working out and that player being given that chance.
Before the incident, before the state game, it was always been like this Seminole rap. When you're in the room when Jimmy Johnson played, tape of the Seminole rap.
Oh yeah, like the Super Bowl shuffle, right? It copied the Chicago Bears, and that was, could that have been the reason that we played so well? I don't know. We had a great team, but boy, that really fueled us, right? I mean, we were defending national champs, so we definitely had some pride, and some of those players that were on that team. I mean, we had the first pick of the NFL draft eventually on that team. I don't know how many first rounders, at least probably over 20, or around 20 first rounders if you add up all the classes. You got to remember Jesse Armstead, Michael Barrow, Darren Smith were all redshirt freshmen who ended up being amazing NFL players. Ryan McNeil, those guys weren't even playing yet, but we had some pride, and we came out ready to play, and we, it was a big deal that they were coming into the Orange Bowl, right? And it was prime time Monday Night Football. I remember because at that point the NFL wasn't starting until the next week, or they didn't have their first Monday night game, so they featured our game, I think 8 o'clock Eastern on ABC, and it was Florida State ranked number 1 against the defending national champs. So the team was riled up, for sure.
Saturday night. It was on Monday. It was on CBS Saturday night.
You're right. Maybe it wasn't ABC, but I'm pretty sure it was Saturday night.
Yeah, because it got
Was it?
September 3rd. Yeah, September 3rd. Yeah, that was on a Saturday.
You're right. It was Saturday night, but we were the featured game. I don't think the NFL was playing the next day or something, but or maybe there wasn't any major college game that night. I know that everyone was watching that game that day, right? Because you're right, it was Saturday night. But Florida State coming in, it was Deion Sanders, right, coming in as an All-American, and they were loaded. They were loaded. Yeah.
About this game, like 31-0. We scrum had 11 tackles, sack. First shutout since 1976. First time first they got shut out since 1976, but what I see. Yes, also in 13, straight from Miami. That was a big impressive point. Now it's time to get into 1988, the second game against Michigan. That was a tough game because they jumped out on 14. They had control of the game, but the squad was able to rally. And he was a big part of that game because you kicked game-winning field goal wasn't in the final 7. That was 0 for 6 on the clock, but you had a field goal. Talk about that game because it's in Michigan Stadium and all Michigan. Big house. Talk about that game.
We're coming off that 31-0 spanking, right, of number 1 Florida State, so maybe we came in a little bit arrogant. I think we were a much better team than Michigan, but yeah, it was a tough place to play. Bo Schembechler was on the sideline, and they had a really good team. I think Anthony Bowles, Leroy Horde were running backs. I think Greg McMurtry at wide receiver. I mean, they had some really good players, a solid defense. And we probably didn't play that well for most of the game. But then, yeah, Walsh turned it on. Cleveland Gary turned it on. And Rob Chudzinski had some big plays. Cleveland, I think, ran for 2 touchdowns there and got us back in it. All of a sudden, I think that was the game. I want to say now you're testing my memory with that CBS ABC, but I think Al Troutwig was ABC and came out and said, now that Miami has lost, Notre Dame will surely move up to the top spot because Notre Dame had beaten Michigan the week before and on a last-second field goal. So everyone counted us out, but yeah, we were what? It was 30-28, and the crowd was, it's 104,000 people, and they were pretty quiet at this point because the game started getting tight. And Jimmy Johnson asked me to go in and kick an onside kick, and I hadn't practiced it very often. And all of a sudden, I'm out there, and we really need that onside kick, and I get a really, really lucky bounce, and Bobby Hart makes probably one of the best plays I've ever seen. He jumped so high, caught this ball way at the top of the arc of the bounce, comes down with it, and then, yeah, Jimmy Johnson kind of runs a couple plays with Cleveland Gary, and everybody was surprised that we weren't just going to, hammer it down their throat with Steve Walsh and our high-powered offense, which they were, and Jimmy just set me up for a field goal with like about a minute to go. Right. Yeah, with less than 6 minutes to go, like 5 minutes and 25 seconds in the game, we're down by those 16 points. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, no, they stands out also.
Yeah.
That was the second loss that he's had. The first time he lost, he was 59. So that was a big win. Also, talk about this, your experience as a walk-on freshman. That field goal, because it's a lot of pressure. Let's talk about that aspect of winning a game like that. Talk about the field goal.
Right. So, if you're in that type of sport or an act, I think I like to say like a kicker's lots of times like a golfer on a football team, where you got to make that putt, and it's whatever 12 in golf, a 12 or a 14 footer to win, and you kind of have that. You have to have that quiet mind, right? If you're thinking too much, or if you're noticing a piece of confetti floating across the field, or something moving, or something, and it distracts you. That's all you kind of need to miss, right? So you got to have that quiet mind, and you have to be pretty focused in what you're doing. So when I do things correctly, and I think most kickers or people that do this kind of thing, they do things correctly, they don't really remember what they're thinking of, because probably / hopefully they're not thinking of anything other than where they're going to strike the ball. But I do remember I got a surge of adrenaline. Not when everybody thinks, but the snap, I believe, was really inside and almost behind the guy who was holding it. And he had to reach around and go like this to grab it and bring it back. And as a field goal kicker, that's really scary when the ball disappears, because you don't know if it's going to come back. You don't know if the holder's going to drop it and let it go, which would have been disastrous, or if it just would have skipped right by him and all of a sudden you got to pick up the football, call fire. And as a field goal kicker without much practice, you got to run it? You're not going to do that, or throw it or something. So I got that surge of adrenaline and kind of the fear that I wasn't even going to get the opportunity to kick it. And I remember that. But he did a phenomenal job of bringing the ball back. He put it right down. And I hit that ball so hard. And I don't think my intention was for 29 yards to really hit it that hard. You just basically got to make it through the goalpost. It's not a real long kick, right? But I remember just hitting it, and I didn't even feel it, right? It just shot. And it was pretty much right down the middle, and it went real high up through the uprights, and it looks like we're going to win the game. But I do remember that, and I still, when I think about it, I can still kind of have that feeling of the fear, right? And luckily it worked out. But in terms of the pressure, I've had that question asked a lot. You're never really comfortable with. I never was comfortable with pressure, right? Because you're on edge a little bit. You feel it. You feel the tension. But what you hope to do as an athlete is you prepare yourself, and that's what I was good at. I was good at kicking field goals accurately, right? I could hit probably the upright half the time from 40 yards if I really tried, or close, or shave it. If I was at that, I could really pinpoint my kicks, and so you just got to rely on that. And we all got to the all of us that played at the University of Miami, we got there because we developed as children and athletes in adolescence and high school, and I was put in that opportunity a lot in high school. I think I was Gatorade Player of the Week once. We beat the number one ranked team in the country in high school on a field goal. And so you just kind of, you've been there, you have the experience, and you train for that kind of thing. And if you put me in there to try and make a game-winning touchdown pass, I would probably be so nervous because I wouldn't know what to do. But I'm trained at this, so you just channel your energy, use that nervousness hopefully as strength, and let your all your training take over. Which it works. The practice works.
Fast forward to obviously the game here in controversy. Versus College. Obviously, Squad was number one in the country. But he was trying to get back to that the status and his ranking. Number four in the country at the time. Get number one was number four. The squad had 36 games, 36 that won like 20 straight on the road at that time. So unfortunately, the squad lost 20. They should be 31 and 30. Talk about that game, the preparation investment for that game. Talk about the game in general.
Well, to me, I guess because of all the lore and the history, playing at Notre Dame, and unfortunately, we didn't win the game, but to me, that was the thing. To Floridians, it was Florida, Florida State. Those were huge games, not denying that. But there was something about playing at South Bend to me that was it. That was prime time for me. And I think a lot of my teammates probably felt that way too. I do remember, a lot of people don't know, we had to evacuate once we got to the stadium. We had to evacuate and leave the stadium that day because there was threat that someone had put a bomb close to our locker room. Right? I don't think people know that or talk about that. And that was kind of disturbing, to think, hey, we're here to play in a big time game, and all of a sudden our lives were threatened, right? And I think we left, and they had to scan. They brought in dogs and all the type of they do, and they checked. And so then we got back in and kind of had to refocus. And then people remember about that big fight that erupted on the field before the game. It was on TV. Everybody was Miami got in the way of the Notre Dame players, and they started fighting. It was a pretty serious scuffle before the game. And so then at that point, everything was heightened, and it was an intense game. Both of our games in South Bend were really, really intense games. I don't ever remember at any level it being more competitive, more fierce than that. And comparatively speaking, that crowd was way more intense than Michigan's crowd or a lot of other stadiums, just the way that stadium is built. they're literally right on top of you. Michigan, there's more people, but the way the stadium is, it goes out really far, and it flattens out kind of the stadium, right? So that those people in the upper decks, you can never hear them. They're so far away. In Notre Dame, they're right there. I had a fan, jump right out of the stands, land right on my shoulders, and push me almost onto the field. And I look back, and this guy's drunk or whatever, and my first reaction is I'm going to knock this guy out, right? Which I could have done. I mean, the guy's drunk, but you're a player, so you kind of look around. I tell the cop, go get this guy. So supposedly they take him out of the stadium. Turns out I saw the same dude running around the field after they won at the end of the game, so they didn't kick him out. But it's just an intense place to play, and their fans. Yeah, they won the game. I mean, there was some controversial calls. I think everybody knows about that Cleveland Gary play. That the referees actually didn't call a fumble. They called it a turnover on downs. I think they just had they messed up. It was 4th and 7 from the 11, and Cleveland got 10 to 10.5 yards. And was down, his knee was down, and put his arm over the goal line after he was down, and then the ball comes out. Notre Dame recovers, goes insane, and all of a sudden the ref is signaling it's Notre Dame's ball. And everyone, I think even the announcers, thought it was a fumble, but the ref said he turned it over, we didn't get enough yardage. But we just got 10 yards, and all we needed was 7. They gave the ball to Notre Dame. And they ended up winning the game by 1 point. We would have, that touchdown would have made a big difference, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the referees came out like 3 days later and apologized and said they made a mistake. But there was other plays in the game. They really did well. I don't think that we thought that they could have beaten us, but they were better than everybody thought, and they won the national championship that year. That year, just capping it up, I think we beat every conference champion, or almost every conference champion in the country, but lost to Notre Dame by 1 point. And then Notre Dame won the national championship against West Virginia. We kind of thought we should have been given the right to play them again. But, we did go for 2 at Notre Dame instead of tying it up. And that was a Jimmy thing, which, you can't blame him. He was a great coach, but if we would have tied him at Notre Dame, in essence, we would have tied him in South Bend. We would have probably played for the national championship, but we went for the win, didn't get it. Beat some great teams. We killed LSU in Baton Rouge. That was an incredible, just a whitewash of that team. But when because of that season, it was such a great season that followed the national championship season when they beat Oklahoma the year before. Johnson leaving was really tough to take because we knew we had something special. We had players that wanted to play and give it everything they had, and he was such a phenomenal manager. He had a tip-top eye for talent. It seems like he always put the right guys in place, and gotta say it's pretty amazing. But he never really screwed a game up. I mean, we didn't lose ever because of him or his staff. And that's tough. I mean, coaches make mistakes every weekend, and they're big mistakes. That staff was so good, and, he was the leader. I mean, he was the guy on top, and he made sure everything was, churning at all times. So that was a tough one to take because we figured there's nobody that can come in and replace this guy. Right? And now it's going to kind of be on us because no one's going to be as good as Jimmy. And we lost a lot of great staff that went to Dallas as well. So, playing Nebraska, obviously they were a perennial, champion type at the time. I think Big Eight champion. They were always highly talented, but our defense was so good, and they had that, running type offense, and we just shut them down. It wasn't even close, 23-3. We just had too much talent, and too much speed, too many players with a lot of speed, and it wasn't even close that game. So we ended up, amazing season. What were we, 11-1? And the Arkansas game was a close game, but other than that Notre Dame game, boy, it was an awesome season. And the Notre Dame game was such a great game. I mean, they still have TV shows about it, right? The Catholics versus Convents. It just didn't come out of the top. What's that?
They did an ESPN 30 for 30.
Right.
I don't know if you saw it.
I did. It was pretty funny, yeah.
Yeah, I saw it. So, the squad finished 11-1. Kicked 3 field goals for us. Sure, it's a Super Bowl win. Kicked 3 field goals.
Right.
Defense, man, was great. Steve Taylor, the quarterback, passed 6 times. Awesome quarterback. Obviously, this week, his last name was 5 yards, touchdown last time. So it was the last game for obviously Johnson missed the ball. So finished up with I think that's one record. That's fast forward to 1989. Now you have a new coach, and Dennis Erickson. Talk about first time met Dennis Erickson, reaction to now Dennis Erickson's team. 1989.
Yeah, I remember one of the fraternities kind of across from the Heck Center, pretty close on Hurricane Drive, put out a sign that said, "This town isn't big enough for 2 Ericksons," right? Because Craig was going to replace Steve Walsh, right? So I remember that. And we didn't know much about him. I mean, we knew that he had a successful year at Washington State. But when he came in, it was just a big change, right? They came in with cowboy boots. They were in Pullman, Washington. Their whole staff came in with cowboy boots. You didn't see that a lot in Miami, so it was a little bit of a culture shock, right? But I think Dennis is a really smart guy. He left in place what he could, knowing that we had, that we were a powerhouse. He brought in his own offense, which, was phenomenal. I think we were probably even more successful with him offensively than we were with Jimmy Johnson's staff, which is incredible. He changed things up a bit on offense and really put some pieces in place to highlight what he did, and he took advantage of that talent. And I don't know, you may, but has a coach ever come into a college program and his first year his team wins a national championship? I don't know if that's ever been done. So we beat Alabama in that Sugar Bowl that season. You got to hand it to them. I mean, that's not an easy situation for a coach to come in and replace a guy like Johnson and keep things going like he did. Yes, we were talented, but it starts at the top. You got to have a guy leading you to a certain point that doesn't, lead you into a ravine, right? And he did a great job. And he was the players type coach, which is good and bad. Players maybe we weren't disciplined maybe sometimes like we should have been, but the players really loved Dennis. He went to bat for you, and I think that winning was important, but he was a good coach. He was a good guy to play for.
He also did Erickson, brought to Alabama on that offense, which is revolutionary. Wide receivers, made out.
Yeah.
Back running back to back, so he brought that element to the table. And Wisconsin, first game, 1-3. Starting to see the Cal one talk about Notre Dame game. That's when I became a Hurricane fan. that's why in 2017 this was revenge because coming off of what happened to him before he went to go prove that he deserved to be number one. So Notre Dame is number one because of this winning the game. Pretty much on the rights Rocket history. On his first round, lose to coach. So guys like that do so much. It's just on top. Like talk about the racial aspect that Rashad won 2017. Talk about that game when he's preparing for the next game this season.
Um, I've seen a bunch of quotes from some of my old teammates, and I forget in what context why they were being asked this question and where it came out. But if you were, a freshman in 1987 or 86 or 88, right in that time frame, my class or around that class, many of them said that was the most intense, incredible game that they had played. Dominated them, but the fans in the Orange Bowl specifically that night were just unbelievable. It was a frenzy. Were you at the game or did you watch it on TV?
I watched that team.
Yeah,
I
never.
didn't go to the game.
Right, so the fans in the stadium were like nothing I've seen at any level that game, and so it almost seemed as if, and the last time when we played Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl and beat them, when I think Notre Dame, I think might have been ranked number one. Well, they played them at the Pro Player Stadium.
Yeah.
That was pretty hype too. I was at that game. The fans were awesome that night. It had a similar feel. So yeah, Notre Dame really, like I said, to me that was the game, no matter what. And that 1989 game was just intense. And my preparation next year, I wasn't quite as fortunate, unfortunately, but I was focused on Rocket Ishmael. Right? He was an incredible returner, and I had to kick off to him. And so we worked on all kinds of different ways to trip him up, different kicks to different corners. We did flip kicks. We never wanted to let him get a rhythm returning because we knew he was deadly. So we did a great job that night. We stopped him and just dominated. I think the score wasn't necessarily indicative of how competitive the game was. The score was a little bit more lopsided. The game was closer than that score showed. That famous play from Erickson to Randall Hill that went for 40-something yards on third down. Probably way back into our side of the field. I think he threw that maybe from around the 10-yard line or even further, closer to the goal line. That was a back-breaking play, I think, but it was a tight game. They were a very, very talented team.
That play you talking about 39-43, Erickson to Hill, that capped off a 22-play drive. And the offensive line had over 11 minutes on that drive. Dale Dawkins had a great game, very underrated receiver at Miami.
Number 11.
7 catches for 22 receivers. Game about the defense, offensive touchdown that broke that both card interception. That return for a touchdown. That was basically our overall. It was just dominated by the Miami defense.
Yeah.
Rocket Ishmael had a separated shoulder. Tony Bryce was a non-factor. His scores in the 1980s at that time were like 0.5 at the Orange Bowl. So that was a big, big win. So that, carried the national title hosting line that you need to know what's in the country. Let's get into the game, the matchup against Alabama, obviously. Now, in two scenarios, you had to beat Alabama, but you also had to hope that Notre Dame beat Colorado to give you a chance to win the national championship. And obviously, it worked out. Miami won 30-25 to win the national championship. And now, Colorado goes to Notre Dame. You beat Alabama. So talk about that scenario. Talk about that game against Alabama.
Yeah. We had some as a team. I remember we had some trepidation going to play in the Sugar Bowl. We were excited to play Alabama, but I think the last time they had gone, they had taken a tough loss in a Sugar Bowl to Tennessee, right? And one of our team leaders and best players, Greg Mark, who was All American, he had a scar on his face, Rashad. That I don't know if you've ever seen him, but it ran like the whole side of his face, and it's a thick scar. And he got that standing in an elevator in the previous Sugar Bowl, and some Tennessee fan just hit him with a beer bottle. He was just in the elevator, didn't know, and the Tennessee fan was drunk and hit him in the face with a beer bottle. So that was kind of a weird deal going to the Sugar Bowl for us because of that loss, and we had to buckle down, and there was a lot of distractions in New Orleans, right? So there was it was a tough game, I think, for us to get up for just because of the history. And Alabama had tough players, very talented, and that game I think we played really well. And that 33-25 score, in my opinion, was the opposite. I think we really dominated Alabama. I think the score was a lot closer than the game. It seems like to me we were in control the entire game. Personally, I did not have a great game that game, but man, our offense and defense, they were hitting on all cylinders. And I think Alabama just at the end maybe got closer score wise, but we were clearly the better team. We remember having, I remember having to root for Notre Dame, which was very strange, right? Such a big rival, but for us to be number one, we needed that win. I think what did they win 10-9 or something against Colorado? It was a close game.
Notre Dame, they won by 15 points. They won 21-6.
Oh, okay. So then I think the next year when we played Texas, they played again. That might have been the 10-9 game or something. But in one of those games, Colorado won, right? But I remember, Notre Dame needing to win, and that game was in the Orange Bowl. Is that where
That was
Notre
Orange
Dame?
Bowl, Colorado.
Colorado, yeah. So I remember that. It was we were trying to rooting for them, but it worked out. We got a little lucky. We needed that. But at the same time, we when you're 19, 20 years old and you're going up against a team like Alabama, I think we were pretty well managed as a team. I think Coach Erickson did a great job. You can deal with the task at hand, and we felt like as a team, hey, we only can control this game. We beat Alabama. That's what we can do, and so be it. If Colorado wins and beats Notre Dame, they deserve it. But we really wanted to at least beat Alabama and end up being number 2 in the country, if not number 1. And I think we did a good job of focusing. And that was what had our attention. And that's how you beat a team like Alabama. You start thinking too far ahead, or thinking about other things you can't control, or you're going to be distracted. Kind of like what I talked about at the beginning. I mean, you just really got to buckle down and stay focused. And I think we did a really great job in the Sugar Bowl.
Erickson in the fourth quarter threw a touchdown pass to Rashad, tight end, backup tight end, picked up 11-yard touchdown. Rashad and 12-yard touchdown to make that for that sealed the deal. Dennis Erickson became the second ever coach to win a national championship in first year with school. The previous one was Frank Denny, who was the DC-48 zone. Erickson made history, became the second head coach to win the national championship in the first year with the school. Yeah, Colorado was number 1 in the country, and with that loss, Miami, the squad was number 2. So, Colorado had to lose, and Miami had to win in order to ensure the national championship. And Smith said, Miami team in the 80s, beat the national championship, 83, 87, 89. So let's fast forward to your junior year, 1990. The expectations obviously at Miami, preseason number 1, but unfortunately, you lose to BYU 28-21. Talk about that loss to BYU.
surprising. They were not the better team, BYU, but they got us first game of the year, and I just remember that altitude really being a factor. Our guys were sucking wind, so they played well, and they had the Heisman Trophy winner that year, right, Ty Detmer.
Yes.
And the guy was magical that night. I mean, and it took that kind of performance to beat it. He just seemed to do everything right, and he was talented. He was smart, made the right reads, and they got us. They got us. They had also a really great crowd, very intense, tough place to play. You can't hear anything. I kind of call it the football stadium in heaven because it seems like you're in heaven. It's up in the mountains and a really cool setting. But yeah, our guys had a lot of trouble breathing. It's high up there. And but it was Lavelle Edwards, a really good coach for BYU, had a great plan for us. And to hold that offense to 21 points, that was not an easy thing to do because we had some studs on offense. But yeah, that was a tough one to take. That was a tough one. And it got to hand it to him though.
Ty Detmer, 406 yards, touchdowns and interception. Greg Erickson ball pretty well, 299 yards. That was a strange year in '99 because a lot of upsets, a lot of teams was number one, and they couldn't hold on to that number one ranking with, Michigan, Miami, or, Virginia. It's always like, certain teams losing, for like '99. But let's move forward to the California game. I got back on track, 152-24. A lot of celebrations, Middle Hill dancing and stuff like that. Talk about that game that Cal Berkeley's winning 52-24.
Well, we definitely felt like we needed to establish ourselves as a solid team in the country after losing or being upset in Provo. But remember, we're young kids, not that used to travel. We had to go all the way to Provo, come back home, and go back to Cal. A lot of travel, so we felt like it could have been a tough game against Cal. They had a decent team. I personally remember Russell White, who I think was an All-American running back, returning a kickoff against me for a touchdown. That was a tough one to take. He was a great player, but it wasn't an easy game for the first half, I think, and then we took control. But we felt like we really needed to put a good performance in and get back on track. Like I said, traveling to California was kind of a big deal for us. We didn't do that very often. So it's a big time change. You get to the day before, and it takes some education and some acclimation, but by a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds to do that. It's not easy, but yeah, we started rolling a little bit, and I think we showed our talent. It was a very, very talented team. I think it may have been the most talented team that I might have been on. It just happens that we had 2 tough losses that year. In terms of all the celebrating, you can get into that later, I guess, but that became a pretty notorious thing throughout the NCAA that the next year they cracked down on that stuff, right? Miami rule, yeah. You should have been in the team meeting when the referees came in to show us all the video of the new rules the NCAA was making for the next year. And I think there was 27 new rules, and I think something like 19 or 20 were examples of what not to do, and they were hour games of guys showboating, right? So we thought it was funny, but I guess the rest of the country didn't.
Fast forward to October 6, 1990, beat Florida State, lose to them for 31-22. Florida State was ranked number 2 in the country. Just where I was ranked number 9 in the country. The thing about this game is that stood out was the great running game. Steve McGuire had 76 yards on 31 carries for the college. Ran the ball for 144 yards on 16 carries, 2 touchdowns. Great running attack. And snap, Florida State's Nation on Main Street at the time at 14 games. 334 yards on the ground. Talk about that game.
Yeah, was that a noon kickoff? You remember?
It was in the afternoon. I don't know exactly. Maybe it had been 3:30, maybe.
Yeah, I just remember it being for some reason incredibly hot, and Florida State was used to they're obviously they're used to some heat, but when we had those noon or 1 p.m. kickoff games, we felt like we had a huge advantage. I mean, that humidity and that heat in that Orange Bowl was it. And but they fought. They were a tough team. What was it? Dossie for Florida State. Yeah, he was a tough player, right? Had a great season. I think he had a really good game against us. But McGuire just wore him down. I think that was what you said. He just wore him down. When he got going, Mac was tough, and he just he tilted the scales when he got going. The other team you saw him wear down, and I remember them wearing down in that heat, and we were pounding them, and I loved it. I loved it because we just took control of the game.
Okay, so fast forward a couple months later, this was known at the time as the final conflict, Miami Notre Dame and South Bend. Obviously that won 5 for the last 7 meetings. And unfortunately lose this game 29-20. Miami was ranked number 2 in the country. At the time, Virginia was number 1 in the country. They was ranked number 6 in the country. So it's like the elimination game, like whoever lost this game, they had been out in national title hunt. Unfortunately, the squad lost 29-20. Talk about that game.
Tough one. We again intense, same type of setting as 2 years earlier. I just remember it was 22-20 in the fourth quarter. We were driving, and the ball I believe, was on the 33-yard line. And I'm thinking, I told you what my feelings about Notre Dame were, right? I mean, that was the game for me, no matter what. And I thought it was on the 33-yard line. I'm thinking, okay, we don't get a first down, it's going to be a 50-yard field goal to take the lead. We were on their 33. And I was thinking I was going to go in there and I was going to make a field goal. And we dropped back, and Erickson threw an interception. I believe it was Pat Terrell who intercepted it. It was either him or Light, one of those guys. They were great defensive backs. Might have been Light, but I think it was Pat Terrell. And then that was it. They intercepted us right there in the fourth quarter, and they just, I think, ran down and scored that last touchdown for the punctuation score there for the win. But a really close game. Again, it was 3 years in a row of tight, very competitive games. So a tough one to take, especially after beating Florida State. Or no, we beat Florida State first, right? Yeah. So yeah, we were confident. We were confident that we were going to beat them. I think both times that Notre Dame beat us there, they just they really played to the best of their abilities.
I think Todd Light made that interception. I think the night had Terrell, because their secondary had Todd Light, Rod Smith, Greg Davis, Greg Lane, Reggie Brooks. It may have been Todd Light that made the interception.
Yeah, I think Terrell might have made a really good play against us 2 years before that. He might have been
ran I think 60-something yards for an interception or something like that.
Yeah, I think he might have been in the NFL by then already. Yeah. Right. And Light was a first round pick, like a really high pick, I believe. Later, he was some player. The guy was incredible.
This game, Rutgers played very well. He had a 94-yard kickoff return. He kicked it to him and tied the game at 10-10. He ran for 100 yards rushing, 13 carries. Now, obviously, he didn't want to kick to Rocky, but what happened on that kickoff, returning 94 yards? Just was the right kick. What went wrong with that kick?
What went wrong started on the kick before, so not not thinking or not knowing what the field was going to be like. I just hate to say it, I didn't have the right shoes. And the first kickoff of that game, it was muddy underneath the grass. You couldn't tell. It looked like nice grass like on TV, but it was real wet underneath. And I just completely fell and slipped on the first kickoff of the game. And the ball just trickled down and never went to Rocket. But so the next time we go down, take the lead, I kick a short field goal to get us to 10 points. And I had been hitting some pretty deep kickoffs at that time. So kicking it to the 6-yard line was a real short kick for me. But I was nervous that I was going to fall again. So I just kind of relaxed and took it easy. And I really just didn't get into it very hard. And that was all he needed. But if you remember, if you've seen images, the field was so slippery, it kind of messed us up. He catches the ball, and he slips right when he starts to plant to take off. And almost, I think almost his knee almost hits the ground, but he just gets up in time. And, you know, when that happens sometimes, they talk about how it throws the coverage team off, because I think our team kind of thought he had fallen. And he gets up, and he just bolts straight, and then he just turns left. And his speed was unreal, right? Unreal. And my teammates laugh at this when I tell the story, but I'm thinking, hey, here he comes. I can kind of see him. And I'm not a fast guy per se, right? But I completely have the angle on him. And I should just be, he's heading towards the sideline. You know, as the tackler, you have an advantage because he's being forced out there by our coverage, and he either runs out of bounds or he's going to get tackled. And I'm running at an angle thinking, okay, I'm going to at least be able to push him out of bounds. And he was so fast, Rashad, that he just got to that corner. You know, you're going to meet at that corner where you think you have the angle. He got to that corner so much faster than I thought. He blew right by him. So I made 2 mistakes on that play. I should have ran faster to the corner, but I should have kicked the ball better. So it was completely my fault to give him that touchdown. And the crowd erupted. I mean, they went absolutely bonkers. And that was tough to come back from. That was tough. Because it looked like we had control of the game kind of starting out. They weren't doing much. He scores that touchdown. The whole momentum of the game changed. And we were in trouble. It felt like we had to come back and then. So I take that loss. On me.
Now let's fast forward to the Cotton Bowl. That's the difference where Miami just, how you play dominant football. Number 4 Miami versus number 3 Texas. Known for a lot of teams, plus for a lot of sports like conduct, penalties all over the place. Middle Hill scoring a touchdown, the tunnel, doing celebration. But talk about preparation aspects of getting ready for Texas at that time, Chicago.
I was just telling the story the other day. We had about 5-6 guys on our team from Texas, and they were some of our best players. Kevin Williams is one of them. Jesse Armstead's another. C.J. Richardson was on that team. I think Terrace Harris. We had some really good players from Texas, and University of Texas Longhorns. They had an offensive lineman. I think his name was Stan Thomas, and he was an All-American, big old guy, supposed to be a first-round draft pick, and was quite the talker. You know, he was good. He could talk, right? And he was saying all kinds of things in the paper on how they were just going to run right over us, and that they weren't going to be able to stop. We weren't going to be able to stop them running on us because he was going to make sure of it. And our team lost their minds on this guy reading what he was saying. And we had a team meeting, and everybody was so upset about what this guy had said that people were just shouting out things and, really. Right, 170 pounds. He could run, and he was a great athlete, but he wasn't an intimidating looking guy. He comes out at the team meeting and says, guys, when we kick that ball off, I'm going to run down and I'm going to knock one of those dudes out. He used a little bit different language than I'm using right now. He says, you'll see, I'm going to go down and I'm going to knock a dude out. And we're kind of looking at him like, okay, Robert, you go do that. But you can't envision a 170-pound guy knocking someone out. Well, opening kickoff, they have, I think he's an All-American running back. Chris Samuel, I think was his name. And we changed our kickoff strategy up for that game. He didn't expect to get the ball. We usually kick to the other guy, and we changed it up. So we kicked the ball to him, and Robert Bailey flies down the field like a missile, and he launches himself that day. At that point, there's no helmet-to-helmet penalty, right? He launches himself and hits that Samuel right in the center of his face with his helmet, and Samuel he flies back on his back, and he's literally knocked out on the field, flat on his back. They had to stop the game. They had to come get him. He couldn't walk, and our team went crazy because Robert Bailey did what he said he was going to do. And at that point, the game was over. I mean, we just killed him. And then we were going to rub it in because they were all so mad at everything. And, mostly the Longhorns for what they were saying, and the Stan Thomas, they just took it out on them on the field. It was nasty. I remember, Jim Nance, who's still he's a commentator with Romo today. He was just letting us have it. He was the announcer in that game, and he was just criticizing us, criticizing Coach Erickson. We had no idea. We were just out for blood, right? We wanted to kill. We just wanted to embarrass this team on the field. We had no idea really the impact of what we were doing. We weren't act out. We were just mad, right? The team was mad.
Allen had 3 sacks. Carroll had 235 yards. Despite Miami having penalties, 202 yards. Still, obviously, the squad was talented. Coming in, taking credit Erickson. His final game, 4 touchdowns, 17 yards. Went out on a great note that game. Now it's fast forward to his senior year, 1991. Arkansas 31-3. Let's talk about the Houston game. This is a hyped up game because Houston was a big time program at that time. Andre Ware won the Heisman Trophy in 1989. Here comes this guy, David Klingler, rightfully so. He was doing his thing, but made a statement. His squad made a statement. He threw 40-10. Talk about that game.
So we were taking a lot. I remember our team was taking a lot of their attention personally. They were kind of the media darlings of the NCAA at that time because of their offense, right? It was John Jenkins, who was their coach, had a similar type offense as Erickson, but they were putting up massive numbers, right? And Klingler was a talented player, but our team wanted to show otherwise, right? And I remember I was a captain for that game, and I forget who else was captain, but it was, like defensive linemen, I remember, and maybe a linebacker, and they're saying, do not shake their hands at the beginning of the game. We're going to make a statement. I was kind of uncomfortable with that, right? Because like I said, I'm like the golfer on the football team. I can't really take out aggression. I gotta be cool. And for me to try and be angry is somewhat of a contradiction of what my position and what I do on the field. But I remember David Klingler was so nervous, like you could see it in his eyes. I stood in front of him at the beginning for the coin toss, and I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna kill this guy, right? He just did not feel right. And I remember them going off in the locker room before the game started after warm-ups, and our crowd, it was a night game in the Orange Bowl, they were in a frenzy too, because Houston was coming in and supposedly going to beat us. They were throwing batteries at the Houston Cougars, from the stands as they were going through to the tunnel and just pelting them with all kinds of stuff, but literally batteries. Like I heard one ding off one of their helmets, and it wasn't even close. I mean, we killed them. Our defense just completely dominated them. 40 to what was it? 40-10.
40-10.
Yeah, it felt like 70-0. You know, like they never had a shot.
David Klinger was sacked 5 times. And the thing is that he came off a 9-touchdown passing game against Louisiana Tech.
Yeah.
And, he definitely was worth the hype, but didn't do a great job against your Miami fast defense. Huerta, 4 touchdown passes, 65 yards, 165 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. And this was a big game because, Miami was able to win against the number 10 team in the country. That's why I was number 2 at the time. And it was a 39th home win in a row. Tied Notre Dame for the longest streak in NCAA history at that time. So that's a monumental game. Win the 39th game in a row at home. And tied Notre Dame for the second longest winning streak at home in NCAA history. Also, the Penn State game, that was a great game, 26-20. Big game because obviously these two teams, have met in the infamous Fiesta Bowl, Orange teams and all that. Miami lost, unfortunately, 14-10. Fiesta Bowl in 1987, but now you beat each other in 1991. Talk about that game as Miami won 26-20.
Yeah, and remember, you're talking about how big that Houston game was, but they're all big back then. It was a lot different because we didn't have that playoff situation. So we kind of felt back then you had 11 games and you had to not only win, but you almost had to show style points because it was a voting system for the championship. And we felt like we better look good every game because it's going to matter when they vote for us at the end of the year. And so it was not only the score during the game, but it was also how you played and how you appeared to be dominant because you wanted those voters, coaches, and the Associated Press. So yeah, the Houston game did set us up, and it put us, in the place where we wanted to be. Now it was my senior year. We had some great players, and we were serious about winning the national championship and taking it that year after that, 1990 season, which was tough with those losses. But we had a great team then and just kind of came up short. So we had something to prove. And Penn State sucked, always. They were so well coached. And they had that Tony Sacca, right? I mean, he was a tough quarterback, big guy, was willing to tuck the ball, run it up the middle, take on linebackers, and he would hit. He would hit hard. And he would not shy away. This guy did not give up. That was a one tough quarterback right there. And they had O.J. McDuffie, right, on the team, I think, who later had a really good career for the Miami Dolphins, had a tough defense. And yeah, I think we knew it would be a tough game. That was probably one of the toughest I had ever been in terms of watching the physicality of the offense and defense. The hits were intense. It felt like an NFL game that game. I think either team could have won that day. They could have easily pulled that out. We were challenged. Turner was tough.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Despite winning 26-20, first half score was 6-6.
Yeah.
It was a defensive struggle, field goals. That was all about. But then the explosion of the team, special teams, the offense took over. As far as Copeland caught a 80-yard touchdown pass from Gio Toretta.
Kevin Williams
scored a 91-yard punt return. And Mark Thomas caught a 42-yard touchdown pass from Gio Toretta. Make it 26-14. So offensively, say I control this game, it's up 16-7. The thing about you, why I think I have it going, is that you made a clutch kick, a 45-yard field goal after Steve McGuire ran for 27 yards. That was a clutch kick because they cut the lead to 16%. Talk about that game overall, preparation, getting ready for that game. Let's talk about that before the game, what that game was like, just preparing for Florida State. Because it's number one versus number two, and he's competitive in that. Talk about that game.
Yeah, that was, you know, it didn't get any bigger than that, and it's never gotten any bigger than that. It was it. I mean, are there games that were just as? Yes, but number one, number two in Tallahassee with that talent, that was a special day. Obviously, a very special win for us to overcome that crowd there. It was a tough place to play. Personally, I kind of had a little bit of a Rocket Ishmael challenge because they had All-American Terrell Buckley, who was a really tough returner. So I had to get ready for him and make sure that he didn't make a game-breaking play. But we made the big plays when we had to, right? Yeah, the kid missed the field goal at the end. But that fourth down conversion by Horace Copeland towards the end that led to our taking the first and our only lead of the game by 1 point. Such a big play. I remember Coleman Bell making just an incredible catch on a pass from Gino. Obviously, McGuire was a force. We were just really needing to hit on all cylinders because, Florida State had as much talent as anybody in the country. Their quarterback was All-American that year, and they had incredible receivers and running backs and linebackers. Well, that was Marvin Jones was on that team, who was a first-round pick. They were just loaded, and to play them there, to beat them there, that required, as great of an effort as we could have, as we could have put forth. I mean, we played well, they played well, and it was an incredible ending. I turned away because the kid had made 3 field goals that day, right? And then he was lined up. I think Bobby Bowden made a really big mistake there at the end of the game and how he managed the clock and telling Casey Weldon to down it. He shouldn't have. I thought that they should have ran another play. If I'm not mistaken, I think they might have attempted that field goal on 3rd down. Or they did something weird towards the end, and Bowden, he messed up. I think he flinched there, and I think Casey Weldon even recognized it. I remember like a facial expression or some body language saying like, "What are you doing?" They could have run another play or something like that. They didn't. In terms of you brought up my field goal, I won't talk too much about myself, but that was probably the most pressure I ever felt in a football game on that kick. Because of the magnitude. Yes, it wasn't for the win at the time, but if that kick doesn't go in, you and I both know we probably don't win that game. So I felt a lot of pressure on that one. And then later on, I had to kick off to Buckley. I was like, man, I had visions of rockets. So luckily, I was able to put that kickoff in the end zone and got a touchback. So it was definitely a game of inches. And then, by the way, our center was injured during the game, and he wasn't able to come in on the extra point to take the lead 17-16, and we had to put in Rusty Medeiros, who was a phenomenal football player, right? I mean, like he had sacks after, multiple sack games throughout his career many times, but he never really knew how to center the ball back, or he barely knew. And he went in there and did a formidable job. But I think that Kirk Carruthers, it was the guy, he came through the line and he tipped that extra point and almost made it go wide, but he tipped it enough to make it, change directions, but it just snuck inside the upright, and when it went in. So we were lucky on that extra point to take the lead, and then, the kid missed the kick. But I think Bowden blew it. As great of a coach as he was, like I told you, coaches make mistakes every weekend, and many of them. and he blew it there with Casey Weldon. They had a lot of talent. They could have done something different there on offense versus putting that game in the hands of the kicker or on the kicker's foot at that time. I think they should have done something else.
Kevin Thomas, might make it 3 field goals missed. He could have won it for Florida State. Missed 25 seconds left, 34 yards to the game. That's why I was number 1. And the thing about it, entering this game, Miami had won 7 games in a row against top-ranked opponents, so that was the 8th straight at that time. Against the ranked opponents, that was number 1. 8 straight wins against top-ranked opponents. Now, so my fast forward to the Orange Bowl, your last game as a Hurricanes dominated Nebraska 22-0. Talk about that game with your second national championship at Miami, 22-0.
I think that game, there was never a doubt in our mind. We were going to go out, we were going to win, and it wasn't overconfidence. I mean, now you're talking about, by the way, I was a redshirt that 1987 year, right? So in the 5 years that my class was there, we were number 1 in 1987, number 2 in the nation in 1988, number 3 in the nation in 1989, number 2 in 1988, number 1 in 1989, number 3 in 1990, and then we wanted to finish number 1 again. So it was 1, 2, 1, 3, 1. So the worst we finished was 3rd in the country with 3 national championships. So we won in 87, 89, and 91, right? So I have 3 rings in my drawer, yeah. So we were determined to win that game. Obviously, we weren't the unanimous national champ because we shared it with Washington. We won in the AP, I think, and they won in the coaches poll. So we both ended up going to the White House as co-national champs. But against Nebraska, we had beaten them before. We just felt we were the better team. We got a whole month, more or less, back then to prepare, and we were just going to go out and crush them, and we did. I mean, that game wasn't even close. We just were the better team that one. 2-0. We could have beat them 40-0.
Yeah, that's the understanding. Nebraska needs 2 yards rushing.
Yeah.
Came to this game averaging 41 points a game. Nebraska shut them out. They averaged also 150 yards on the ground. Ran 52 yards. Great game by Larry Jones, the freshman fullback. He ran for 144 yards and a touchdown right there. It was Nebraska's 5th most in a row. First shutout in 88 since 1973, 220 games to go. And itself, third field goal in the game from 54 yards out. Third quarter, and won 45th straight game in the Orange Bowl. So
Right.
Because we're at Miami, let's get to your documentary. What reached out to you to be on this new documentary to talk about Miami football at that time from history of 33. Like, what was it like being on that documentary?
I just want to mention Larry Jones that you mentioned. He's a freshman MVP of that game. So Larry was a talented guy and very deserving of that. But for him to step up for Stephen McGuire, who had hurt himself, they had taken his knee out against Boston College a few weeks before. McGuire was one of the best running backs in the country, but Larry stepping up was a big game, and it was an awesome performance by him. I still remember that. The documentary back then was a little bit controversial. The university did not condone that taping, and it was a little bit kind of underground. I found out that they had to get a hold of ex-players on their own, and they were having a tough time finding us all because the U didn't know what it was going to be about. They didn't know they were going to be portrayed in a negative or a positive light. I mean, it was both, right? That's what made it interesting. It showed some of what Miami as a city is about and where some of these players come from. which is a tough background. But I think in the end, the message was, hey, these guys came together and they played hard and they worked hard and they gave everything they had. And we did it the right way. I mean, Miami had some issues with NCAA investigations prior to and people getting paid, and we've had that. But we were none of our players at that time. And we had some issues, but they weren't getting paid by boosters. They weren't getting agents early. I knew our stars. I knew them well. These guys knew, a lot of them knew they were going to get paid in the NFL, but they were doing it the right way back then. And so I think that's what the message of that documentary was. And it was an interesting perspective. But back then, when they were filming it, I didn't even know it was going to be. I didn't even know of 30 for 30. We may have been one of the first ones, if not the first one. Rashad, you can look that up. But that's when the 30 for 30s first started, right around then. And I think what they showed that first one, like after the Heisman presentation that year when it came out, what was that, around 2006? 2009? Was that when it was? That might have been the second one. I want to say it was like 06 when that came out. 07. It was one of the first ones. Anyway, yeah, we didn't know.
I saw it right here. It said he gave that it premiered on ESPN on 12, 2009.
Oh, was it 09?
Yeah, 2009.
Okay, yeah, but it was one of the first 30 for 30s, if not the first.
Probably with some other, documentaries at that time. For 30 for 30. That was a big one. That was one more popular.
Yeah, that kind of started the run, But yeah, it ended up being, like I said, a really interesting perspective. They, the company that did that, you got to respect what they did. They're artists, and they did a good job of I guess, sending the message of, or showing the public that didn't know what we were about, a lot of the insides of the program, right? They did a great job, I thought. Well, a lot of people thought that my career at Miami would lead to, like a Hall of Fame NFL career. And, I was probably steps away from that. I used to train with Adam Vinatieri. And, as great as he was, he will be a Hall of Famer. At the time, if you saw me kicking next to him, you would have probably wanted me on your team. I was just a more polished kicker at the time. I was much more accurate. He then developed and became, maybe the best ever, or one of the, but I maybe didn't set my sights for greatness in the pros. I was a University of Miami guy. That was like my ultimate thing. The pros was kind of an afterthought for me, and I know I just never really expected a professional career. I wanted to go to Miami, win national championships, and get my degree. I ended up having a great career in the Canadian Football League, won a Grey Cup